Welcome to Nick on Knicks, where your boy N.I.C rants about the latest Knicks news. What's up, fam? If you like me, you spent these last couple days just basking in that Game 6 win, that Game 6 demolishing of the defending championship Celtics. There's some people out there who say, yo, why are you know, celebrating a second round win? It's a show that the Knicks, they don't know how to act. They're not good fans. Listen, anybody who doubts this fan base, anybody who hasn't noticed that the Garden can continues to rock and be the world's most famous arena, the mecca of basketball, even through these 2+ decades of futility by this team, then they just simply don't know basketball. Now, as a fan, I think it is okay when your team has not been to this stepping stone to the NBA Finals in 2.5 decades. I think it's well within our right to enjoy this. And I don't give a fuck what the Portnoys of the world and especially a lot of Boston fans have to say about how we decide to celebrate our victory. The series that nobody thought we could win. Nobody picked us to win. We'd be lucky if we got to 5. If we got to 6, we should look at it as a success. And we end up coming out in Game 6 and in absolute just put no type of caveats, no type of, oh, well, the Knicks should have done this, or Jason Tatum wasn't there. We were up 3-1 before Jason got hurt. He got hurt with just under 3 minutes to go, and the Knicks had a 9-point lead and were in control of that entire second half of that game. Beyond that, the way that we won Game 6, because they won Game 5 without Tatum in very, very convincing fashion, the way that we won Game 5, the way that we lost Game 5, if you're like me and you were a Knicks fan, you were thinking to yourself, yo, man, we got to win Game 6. And clearly the Knicks came out there and they felt that way because they took care of business. They went up 18-16 and never looked back. It was just a laugher. And I wanted to take a second just to enjoy that a little bit longer before we look forward to tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern, Knicks versus Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. This is a regular occurrence, Knicks versus Pacers in the ECF or just in the playoffs in general. We've seen it throughout our lives as Knicks fans, if we are of a certain age. To younger Knicks fans who maybe saw it last year for the first time, they don't remember, the Melo versus Paul George, and then obviously Ewing, Starks, Oakley, and the gang versus Reggie Miller, Mark Jackson, the Davis brothers, Rick Smits. Great series. Great series. And the Knicks last year obviously lost in Game 7. They were down quite a few players at that time. And the Pacers came in to the Garden, Game 7, and they blew the Knicks out. That Melo team, they lost to Paul George. I'll never forget. Roy Hibbert blocking Melo's shot multiple times at the rim. And then if we get back into the last time, which was 2000, where the Knicks beat the Pacers to advance to the finals, that was that 8th seed, Ernie Grunfeld. Shout out to him. He put them together. And they had a very disappointing season. 50-game season, brought in some new players. Patrick gets hurt. Patrick comes back for the playoffs. He's playing pretty well. He gets hurt again in that Indiana series. And if you remember back then, I will still say that if he had been healthy and been able to pull David Robinson away from the basket a little bit in the finals, Knicks might have had a chance. But, Knicks lost in 5, gentleman sweep, Avery Johnson, jumper from the corner. And then you go back, I can remember, obviously, a game that my father was actually present for, where Starks goes up for the layup, and this is like I can really start remembering the Knicks till back to about when I was like 8 years old, which is interesting because my son is 8 years old right now, and he's all in, all in on this season, on this series, on this playoff run. We've had electric moments, the two of us, watching some of these games. When Brunson hit that shot to close out the Pistons in round one, I mean, him and I were at the house watching it together, and my wife talks about how fun it was to watch this because we just like got up, both started screaming. He met me in like midair. I caught him. We were going crazy. It was great. And I can also remember Patrick Ewing with the finger roll. You know, we have Patrick Ewing getting the tap dunk on the Stark missed layup to get us to the finals in 1994. And then, I don't know what year. It was a year or two afterwards. I'm not going to look it up. Look it up if you want to. But, you know, we end the series, we end the season with Patrick Ewing against Indiana. And he's got a wide open, ends up being a layup. A lot of people feel like it should have been a dunk. But he, you know, goes off the tip of his finger, hits the back of the rim, and comes off. That was one of the most crushing ends to a Knicks season that I've experienced in my life. It was very long ago, and I was a preteen or a teen at the time, and I'm 40 now, and it still hurts. And last year hurt. Last year hurt because it was a season of what ifs. I mean, you don't even have any Julius for the entire playoff run, and then as the playoffs go along, even the OG loss, I thought if Josh Hart stayed healthy last year, we still could have taken them out. Once Josh Hart hurt the abdominal, now I know he continued to play. He went out for a lot of that game, came back, played in the seventh game. He wasn't the same. He wasn't. You could tell he was nowhere close to being able to do what he typically can on a basketball court. He was very compromised. Probably should not have been playing. But at that point, it was, you know, anybody who could get out there. We needed him. We needed him. So there's a lot of history that goes into this series. And you have an Indiana team that, much like the Knicks, are peaking at the right time. They look as good as they have all season right now. Now, similar to their run last year, they played a Bucks team with Dame Dalla blowing his Achilles early in that series. And then they play a Cleveland team that has injuries to Mobley, has injuries to Garland, has injuries to even Donovan Mitchell at certain times throughout the series. He wasn't forced to miss a game, but he was a little gimpy. I think he had a calf. I think it was a calf. But yeah, man, that Cleveland team didn't quite look like themselves. And give Indiana credit. Indiana played very well in that series. Tyrese Halliburton is hitting, you know, clutch shots. You know, they're moving the ball as they always do. They're a very good passing team. They get out, they run in transition. Give them the credit for getting to where they are. And now, once again, it's Knicks versus Hicks in the finals of the Eastern Conference. Knicks are minus 155 to win the series. So Knicks are favored. They do have the home court advantage. Game one will be at the world's most famous arena. And let's get into the series. Let's get into what we think about how this series are going to play out and what some of the keys are to the series, some of the matchups. We'll very quickly touch on what's happening over in the Western Conference Finals with the Thunder versus Minnesota, and, you know, how we think that'll go and what would be the better matchup for the Knicks. And then last but not least, I will give you my prediction. So first and foremost, Draymond Green has been announced that he will be with the inside crew for the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, we already have to deal with Reggie on the telecast for all of the games. I mean, and Reggie, as recently as last season, he was on All the Smoke. I think it was like just after just after the season ended, he goes on All the Smoke and he talks about how much he just hates the Knicks and he hates the Knicks fans and everything like that. And so this is who we have to deal with as the color commentator for all of the games. I gotta say this though, I don't think Reggie has been super anti-Knicks this playoffs thus far when he has been the broadcast team. I don't think he's been that bad. I really don't. So, listen, it is what it is. Would I love to be able to hear like Breen and Clyde, or at least have it be on ESPN where I'm going to get some Breen, even if I have to deal with Doris Burke? Richard Jefferson, another leopard who has changed his spots. That guy used to kill the Knicks. I heard him multiple times in that Boston series saying that, Knicks have been on the bad end of some of these calls this game, So, okay, Rich, I'm willing to, accept you back. Think about Richard Jefferson. He was on a podcast, We Might Be Drunk, with two of my favorite comedians, Sam Morrill and Mark Norman. And the thing that sucked is that I'm going back to the Nets crushing the Knicks in the like early 2000s, just being a way better team overall and really just giving it to us whenever we played them. I don't like him. And he's crushed the Knicks as a commentator over the years, though this year it does seem like it's switched up a little bit. But hey, I got to be honest, like, I don't really like that dude. And he goes on that podcast and I listened to it. And he was great on it. He seemed very likable. And I was like, shit, I don't, by the end of it, I was like, I don't want to like this guy. But nah, man. Anyway, so that's what we got to deal with as far as commentary. So Draymond in the pregame and Draymond at halftime and Draymond postgame. I'll be honest with you. If the Knicks win, sometimes I watch the pregame and postgame like well afterwards. I'll look up the videos. The halftime, I almost never watch. I almost always mute it at that point. A lot of times there's like a Met game on or something, but sometimes I just mute it just because I don't want to hear them. And Draymond Green, I mean, I was a guy who defended Draymond as far as like how, I know he's an asshole, but that type of mindset, the way that he conducts himself is what that Warriors team needs, and he needs to have that edge. But then he's just continued to become more and more of an asshole, not just with his play on the court, not with the dirty, cheap shots that he delivers to some players, but not all. Like in that Minnesota series, I was like, I bet he don't bring none of that silly shit Julius way. Because Julius is not having that shit. And also Draymond, I mean, just the yelling in the ref's face. But then him trying to be a podcaster and trying to, say things that are inflammatory. And specifically what he had to say about Karl Anthony Towns when he missed a game against the Warriors because his longtime girlfriend, Jordan Wood's aunt, had just passed away, and Kat missed the game to be there, support her, whatever the case may be. And Draymond tried to say it was because Kat was scared. He said, that's what I heard. And then on the podcast, doubled down on it. Said, yeah, I understand all that other stuff that happened, but that's what I heard. I just think that shit is so lame, man. He was scared of Jimmy. When we played Jimmy on the Heat earlier that year, and Kat had 34, I think. So I don't think he was scared of Jimmy Butler. I think he was dealing with what he was dealing with. And then when the Knicks meet the Warriors in that game afterwards, the Warriors smacked the Knicks. Well, they didn't smack us. No, they didn't smack us. That game was fair. It was close till at least towards the end. And the Warriors beat the Knicks, but then, he's screaming at Kat, trying to get into it with him in the game. Talking about looking at the crowd saying he's soft. And then after the game, half the Knicks squad, Mitchell Robinson, PJ Tucker, a lot of these guys, they're all dapping Draymond up. That's one of the low points of the season, really, honestly. So, I mean, I don't think Draymond's very good as far as like in the being an analyst. And I give most podcasts a chance, especially like if the person that's coming out with it, I know them, I've whether I've been a fan or not, if I've seen them, and I tried watching Draymond's. It just doesn't do it for me. He does not seem like he's trying to give you any sort of like expert analysis from a player's point of view. He just seems like he's trying to go viral the entire fucking podcast, just trying to say inflammatory wild shit. And, I don't know, what this really all comes down to is fuck Draymond. I'm not going to pay much attention to anything he says, as I've stopped paying attention to anything he says for a while now. And honestly, what he should do is start off his stint with TNT this Eastern Conference Finals with an apology to Karl Anthony Towns and to Jordan Woods and her family. for that bullshit that he said. That is based in nothing. There's nobody said to him, "Hey man, I heard that Karl Anthony Towns, he's missing the game on purpose because he's scared of Jimmy Butler." Nobody said that to Draymond. Draymond said that shit to get a reaction, and clearly he has. I spent too much time talking about Draymond, but fuck him. Fuck Reggie Miller too. All right, so let's get into the matchups of this series. Obviously, the 2 point guards are the two engines that push these teams. You have Tyrese Halliburton, who is a distributor, pass first guy, has very good clutch numbers this season. We know about the offensive rebound and then the three to beat Cleveland in the last round. And I think he's hit like 10 of his last 11 like big time clutch shots. As a Knicks fan, I hope that means that he's due to miss some. But Halliburton's good, man. I wanted the Knicks to draft Halliburton. I wanted them to draft Halliburton. They ended up going with Kevin Knox. I think I was right on that one. But if we had drafted Halliburton and had our point guard back then maybe we would not have went out and signed Jalen Brunson, the king of New York. JB is Mr. Clutch in the NBA. He is on lists where it's like him, Kobe, and Jordan are the only people on the lists for like, stats through the first 10 games. He's on a bunch of different ones like that. But like, obviously, I mean, what more can you say about JB? He's just been fantastic. Since he's been a Knick, he has brought us so much success, so much playoff success. He took the baton from Julius, and he's gotten us back to an Eastern Conference final for the first time in 25 years. And so those are the two players that, honestly, to me, what you're going to get from them to a certain extent. JB is going to be clutch down the stretch. He's going to get you a lot of points, a good amount of assists. He'll occasionally have that game where he scores like 15, but they're few and far between. He's going to have more 30s than 15s. And so I feel like as a Knicks fan, you feel like you pretty much know what you're going to get out of Jalen Brunson. And all you can do is hope that he can be the person that he has always been, and maybe even in the furthest he has reached with this team, maybe even go up a notch. He continues to show you that he's the type of guy that steps up when it matters most. So we might even see the best of Jalen Brunson in this series. I also think this is going to be by far the softest defense that he's went against in this entire playoffs. I mean, matchup-wise, a lot of people expect to see some Nembhard starting on JB. JB has great numbers against Nembhard. Are we going to try our best to, get cross matchups and maybe get a Halliburton to spend some time on JB? I'm sure Nesmith will get some time on JB as well, because they do always like to put size on him. Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell. So they're going to throw everything at him because that's what you do to a player of his stature. And JB, the key for him, in my opinion, is that he continues to find that balance between getting other guys involved and getting his own. And, again, we talked about the Kobe's and the MJs. What they would typically do is try to get everybody else off early. And then when it's time, they take over. So Halliburton, on the other hand, I think there's a couple interesting things. First of all, my one criticism of Halliburton is the fact that he has too many games where he disappears. He'll have games where he's great, and then he has games where he does nothing. We saw it in as recently as this Cleveland series. He had one game where he scored like 8 points. The one game that they lost, he just was, and it wasn't even that he scored 8 points. I think his field goal attempts were under 10. No. That's one thing we know about JB. JB ain't shooting 10 shots. JB's shooting 20. He's getting 20 up. If he's hot or not, hey, more often than not he is. If he's not, then it is what it is. But he's getting 20. So I think with Halliburton, the biggest thing is, can we force him into a couple of those games where he kind of disappears? I expect Mikal Bridges to be guarding Halliburton. Similar frames. Bridges is great at navigating screens, something he struggled with at the beginning of this season, but has consistently gotten better. And then in the playoffs has been much, much, much better, has been excellent at navigating screens. So how he not only navigates those screens, but is able to hold Halliburton in check one-on-one, and therefore we don't have to help onto him, and he's not allowed to start moving that ball around, and then that's when they start to get going. That's going to be a huge key matchup in this series. And also, the Pacers like to play fast. Well, guess what? That helps the Knicks play fast as well. If they play fast and they get misses, and now we get a cross matchup, and now Halliburton is guarding Bridges, can Bridges exploit him on that end as well? I think those are huge keys for this series. Absolutely. Expect to see OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam going head to head. These guys played together for years on Toronto, have battled each other in practice. They have quite a few matchups against each other now these last couple years. And last year in the semifinals match against the Pacers, when OG went down, all of a sudden Siakam was unstoppable. When OG was in that first game and a half that OG was in, he was handling Siakam. Siakam was having a hard time with him. And we know, listen, there's not too many people that OG doesn't bother, from your point guard to your center. If we throw him on him, that guy's going to have a hard time. And so OG, I think, poses a real problem for Siakam. What I'm interested to see is Siakam is known as being a pretty good defender. He's not any type of great defender. And what is he going to be able to do with OG on the other end? As we know, when OG shoots 14 or more shots in the playoffs, the Knicks win. I'm pretty sure the number is 14-0. So if we have the ability to be able to get OG involved, if he is a little bit late coming out to that 3-point line, or if he's letting OG cut back door on him, you got to get OG out in transition. You got to get OG some open threes or some, this year he's added that pump fake dribble step back three, which it looks so much better this year. But OG's also has games like Game 5 where he's 1 of 12. Need a big series out of OG on both ends. Need like three big games of OG on the offensive end, and we need consistent defense throughout. I think one of the most interesting matchups, or just overall themes of this series, is, okay, so Josh Hart and Karl Anthony Towns. Teams have different ways of trying to attack them. What we've seen a lot of throughout the season, but definitely in the postseason, is getting some sort of like bigger, stronger guard and having them guard Towns, and then letting the center guard Josh Hart and Josh Hart just roam. Now, in around Game 3 of the Pistons series, when the Knicks made the adjustment to not have Josh Hart just sit in the corner, but to have him more involved in the action, setting screens, and then cutting, I think that was something they unlocked that continued to mature and look better throughout that series, and even looked better in the Celtics series. So I think when I look at their lineup, I'm thinking Nembhard is going to be on JB. I think they might go Miles Turner on Josh Hart. And then maybe Nesmith on Cat. Or they go Halliburton on Hart. Because Hart, you don't really have to guard him at the 3-point line. And, Halliburton can sag off of him and can affect his shot with his length still, but then also hopefully sag off of him enough to not, be able to allow him to get into the paint and do damage. But if that's the case, then Josh Hart has to absolutely kill Tyrese Halliburton on the glass. Halliburton is not going to box out And Josh Hart, as we know, is as active as it gets on the offensive glass, especially the long rebounds, but I mean, even the ones down low. And so if Halliburton is forced to guard Josh Hart has to kill him on the glass all series long. And I think that if you put Miles Turner, if you put Neesmith, there's no way I see them putting Tyrese Halliburton on Karl Anthony Towns, but really anybody they put on Towns can't hold him. If the Knicks are smart and they move the ball and they involve him early, and if he's smart enough to, not take these flailing shots, but take good, strong attempts and also just be assertive and stay out of foul trouble so you can be on the floor. And this is my number one and my first key to this series. It's Karl Anthony Towns, man. Karl Anthony Towns has to have a huge series. And I believe that this series is tailor-made for him. I believe this series is one where we are going to see the best of Cat. We're going to see the pick and pop threes. We're going to see the transition trailer threes. We're going to see him getting down in the paint, driving to the basket. And, I hope we see a lot more of him catching the ball in like the free throw extended or to like basically anywhere from the free throw line to the 3-point line, and then space around him and cutters. When you got Bridges, when you got OG, and you got Hart cutting off of that Cat action, and the big man is now forced to be out there with him. At the beginning of the season, right after the beginning, we struggled a little bit out the gate. And then after that, when we went on our little run, it was Cat just orchestrating, and it was beautiful to watch. I think that will be something that it's a key to this series. It's something that will be there if the Knicks decide to emphasize it. We have to continue to force feed Cat the ball, especially early in games. I talked about matchups before. Another matchup, and obviously the Pacers, their bench has been the best bench in the playoffs. You got Obi, Ben Shepherd, Mathurin, who is he's nice. He's could start on a lot of teams. And you got TJ McConnell. I said last series that if Deuce McBride outplays Peyton Pritchard, the Knicks will win the series. If Deuce McBride outplays TJ McConnell, the Knicks will win the series. TJ McConnell outplayed him last year, straight up. Can't nobody deny it. Deuce had a really tough series against the Detroit Pistons. Then he had a great series against the Celtics. I mean, the chase down block is something I will talk about forever. Coach, what's good, man? Appreciate you as always. Yeah, you talk. See the plus OG locking up Siakam. We talked about that before. Listen, last year in the first 2.5 games before OG got hurt, Siakam wasn't doing shit. And then after that, he killed us. So that is a huge matchup, and it's also going to be huge to see what OG can do on the offensive end against Siakam. But my major keys, first and foremost, like I said, is Cat. Him getting involved, him staying out of foul trouble. I think this is going to be a big series for Cat. We're going to see the full Cat experience. We're going to see the deep threes. We're going to see him doing work in the paint, a couple little middies. I wish he would stop doing that 1-foot shit and just, raise up and shoot a jumper. But Deuce versus McConnell is going to be huge, man. Deuce is a guy that a lot of his impact is predicated on whether or not he's hitting shots. He does other things for the team. He pushes pace a little bit. He plays very solid defense. I'm hoping that Deuce is at that point where, just like both of these teams, he's peaking at the right time. He dealt with some different injuries throughout this season. And with a guy like him who elevates so much in his jump shot, having a lower extremity injury is going to really affect your jump shot. So I'm hoping that, he's at the point where he's feeling healthy. Yeah, listen, the chase down block ain't nothing wrong. Physically, nothing's wrong with him, okay? We can tell you that after that chase down block on Derek White. So him being able to do his thing, him being able to win that matchup with McConnell, I think it's going to be vital. I think the Knicks need to expand their bench a little bit more than this in this series just because of the Pacers and the pace that they play at. I'm not saying that, Cam Payne and Precious and also Landry Shamet all of a sudden need to be, logging 15, 20 minutes a game, but just sprinkle some in. Just get them in. Just get them in a little bit. Give them a chance. See if you can, catch fire one game with a Precious type. I'm sorry, not with Precious. Precious is gonna. We're not catching fire with Precious, but Precious can give you a transition dunk or a transition block or something like that fires up the whole team and changes momentum. That's for sure. And him versus Obi, I think he can match up with Obi. I think that's a pretty good matchup. I think Obi's a little bit more skilled than him. I think Precious got a little more dog in him than Obi does. And then if we can get the campaigns and the Shamits of the world to just, give me one each of a game where y'all have 11 points. One of y'all have 11 points in a game, have a quarter like Campaign did in game 1 against Detroit. It's going to be very, very important to the series. Now, everybody talks about the Pacers and their pace. They run up and down the floor. Even in the half court, they play at a very fast pace. So, can the Knicks match that pace? Personally, I think that's almost a good thing for the Knicks because that's when we play our best. Now, if they're running up the floor and they're getting buckets, and then we have to take the ball out of the rim, out of the net, and go the other way, that doesn't help. But if they're running down the floor and they're missing some of these early transition threes and things like that, well, guess what? That starts us on good pace the other way. And that, as we know, if you've watched this team, is the key to the Knicks offense. When they're getting out and they're running, the offense looks way better than when they get bogged down in the half court. So the pace part is interesting to me. What I think is a major key with that is, how does the pace affect the offensive rebounding? The Knicks, specifically Mitchell Robinson, the block nest monster, shout to CP the franchise. They are a team that loves to offensive rebound. Both Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson are excellent at it, and we are very strategic about how we play an offensive rebound and setting up for that next shot. Post offensive rebound, often it's going to be a 3, and we're highly efficient at making those shots. So when you have a team that likes to run a lot, if you want to sell out for the offensive rebound, sometime that's going to lead to them being able to get those runouts. Your guards at that point have to be very, very disciplined about getting back. And if it's Josh Hart, who I know they call him a power forward, he's a guard. If he's going to be one of those people who's crashing, then that opposite wing or that opposite corner guard has to rotate and has to get back. Remember the Miami Heat series a couple years ago. After we beat the Cavs in round 1, many people expected to pick the Cavs to win that series. We played the Heat in round 2. Jimmy Butler killed us, but one of the things that killed us is they took advantage of us wanting to crash the glass, and they got a lot of runouts and a lot of layups. And I thought that the entire team and keep it a buck, Tibbs were a little bit slow to react to that. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. But if they're always trying to run out, and that leads to us getting a lot of offensive boards and a lot of second chance points, that could be a huge plus for the Knicks. So how the transition and the offensive glass affect each other is a major, major key in this series, in my opinion. Last key is the referees, man. The referees have allowed a lot more physicality in this playoffs than they have in the NBA in years. They started it after the All-Star break last year. They started letting guys play a lot more physical. I remember Jalen Brunson having to go through like a whole he basically had to change and be like, hey, this is a foul now, so I have to be able to play through it. And he made the adjustment. And what we've seen this year has been, more kind of physicality on the same, par as last year. And then we got to the playoffs. And once we got to the playoffs, they just said, it's the 90s. It's whatever, man. Y'all figure it out between y'all. Refs have swallowed their whistle. I thought that the Knicks were on the wrong end. I thought that the officiating in the Celtics series was whack. I really did. I thought there was more than a few games where I was like, I don't understand what I'm seeing here. I don't understand how this is a foul, but this is not a foul. But if the refs continue to allow them to play with this type of level of physicality, advantage Knicks, no doubt. Advantage Knicks. If the Knicks get to be as physical as they were in the first 2 rounds in this series, which I don't see why. I mean, they clearly have, and this has been league wide. They've been letting people play throughout the playoffs, and I think most fans enjoy that more. All I want is consistency, and I hope that they continue to let them play. And I think that is a huge advantage for the Knicks. I think the Knicks are just a more physical team than the Pacers are. I think you allow us to be physical with them, and it will slow down their running game, and it will just grind them down, and they'll be frustrated. They did not play against the Detroit Pistons. They did not play against the Boston Celtics in these first 2 series. I don't think that they're going to be ready for the level of physicality we are going to bring if the refs continue to stay consistent with that. That's huge. It's huge that we see what that is early and we make the necessary judgment, whether that is, okay, they really letting us play. Let's turn it up. Okay, they're not. Let's go ahead and let's, chill it out. Cat, man. Cat, they owe Cat some whistles, bro. Worst officiated player in the NBA. Cat, keep playing strong. Don't complain. Play through the whistle. And there's some calls coming your way. You deserve them. Over in the Western Conference Finals, we have Minnesota versus OKC. We have Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo versus Isaiah Hartenstein. One of last year's Knicks will be in the finals coming out of the West. We know that. And I'm not going to analyze that series. I'm not even going to say who I think is going to win. I'm not a big prediction. I for the Knicks, I'll be like, yeah, this is what I think is going to happen. But I'm not a real big hot take prediction person. It's just not my thing. But I could see that one being a long series for sure. And as a Knicks fan, I have to look at it like, hey, if either of those teams were to come out, who would I rather play? And personally, I would rather play the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think it's a better matchup for the Knicks overall. I think the depth of OKC really scares me, even more so than the Pacers, honestly, because they just have more guys who can really hurt you and be big time players. And so for me, I'd rather play them, and I'd also rather play them for the storylines. It'd be the ultimate who won the trade series. 2 teams make a blockbuster trade 2 weeks before training camp, and then those teams meet up in the finals. Cat versus his old squad. Julius and Dante versus their old squad. Julius versus his old squad. Dante versus his 3 college teammates. Come on, man. The storylines would be great. And you know what? Hey, people are always talking about the fix being in with the NBA. The NBA has to want the Knicks to make the finals. I know the NBA sometimes seems to hate on the Knicks and hate the Knicks with some of the different shit they've done. They have to want the Knicks to be in the finals because they are the only big market team that is left. And all those storylines that I just detailed, that would be, probably the best scenario for the NBA and for the ratings and all that. And I would just like to see it. I think it'd be fun. I think it would be fun. I really do. And I just think it's a better overall matchup for the Knicks. The Knicks, man, look, they got a chance to get to the finals. The things feel like they're breaking their way. Obviously, you cross your fingers, you knock on wood, you do everything and hope that there is no injuries for either team. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I would like to just see it just straight up. Let's just play and let's just see what happens. As we know, one injury to a major player And with the Knicks, we only play 7 of them, so everybody's a major player. But one injury can totally change an entire series. We've seen it before. We've seen it this year. We saw it last year as Knicks fans against the Pacers for sure. So all we got to do is hope that everybody plays strong and plays with force. That's the thing about this Knicks team. We've seen what they could do in that Game 6. They've talked about the fact that, hey, we know that we can do that. It's about us doing that consistently. It's the playoffs. I don't want to hear that shit no more. Bring that type of effort every single night. That Boston game, we started 1 of 10 from the 3. It's not just about all of a sudden you're hitting your shots. No, we played with a level of passion and intensity and defensive just grit that we haven't seen that. We haven't seen it consistently throughout the postseason. We've seen the Knicks pull a lot of games out, but we need to see them put full games together in this next series. I think they can do it, man. I really do. I mean, I'm always optimistic. I picked the Knicks to beat the Celtics. So, I actually said Knicks in 6. Check the tape. Knicks in 6. But I'm really going to sit up here and I say that I think the Knicks are going to lose. And I think in this one, they're not going to be ready for our physicality. I think if you get into late game situations with OG, with Mikal Bridges, with Josh Hart, with Jalen Brunson on the opposite end, with Cat and his shot making, I think that we will make the plays down the stretch on both ends to close out any close games. And I think that we have played 2 tougher series, so we're going to come in just a little bit more hardened than they are. So at the end of the day, what do I think? Knicks in 5. It's your boy N.I.C. Nick on Knicks.